This video is the only BPMN tutorial you will ever need to watch if you are a beginner and want to get started with BPMN. This video won't be one of these super heavy theoretical videos. No. In the beginning of this video, I will very briefly explain what BPMN is and a bit of theory so you can understand what I'm talking about, and then we will together jump directly into practical examples and really step-by-step model business processes in BPMN and also execute these processes so you can really see how BPMN works in real life. That sounds interesting to you? Keep watching, let's get started right away. As you probably know, BPMN stands for Business Process Model and Notation and is a worldwide adopted standard to model business processes, workflows, and activities based on certain rules and stuff like this. In this video, let me say a couple of sentences to the most important components and elements in BPMN. I won't tell you all elements which are out there, that's not needed. I just want to focus on the most important ones so we can get started right away with the practical examples. So what are these most important components of BPMN? The first group I want to present are the events. There are three kinds of it: the start, intermediate, and end event. Events are things that just happen or occur, right? Or for example, the start of a process is an event, process started. And also the end of a process is an event, process ended. But also, for example, 5 minutes are over is an event, right? So this is something that takes place in a specific point in time. These are events. That's the only thing you need to know for now. Then we have another major group, tasks or activities. Mainly tasks look like this: a rectangle with some round shapes and a couple of words in it. And tasks come in multiple forms. Again, there are so many, but I just want to introduce you to three important forms. The first one here with this hand symbol is a manual task. Manual task you could think about, for example, moving a rock from place A to place B is a manual task. No IT system is involved. Then we have user tasks. A user task means, okay, a user, like a human, is interacting with an IT system. For example, you're sitting in front of the computer, entering some data with the keyboard into a form. That's a perfect example for a user task. Then you have service tasks or very automated tasks. This means that a system is doing something in the background automated, or some Java code, whatever, something technical. No human is involved, only IT systems are involved. So you can see there is a level of automation in these tasks. That's all you need to know for now. Then we have gateways, also very important. Gateways help us to basically make decisions or route us where to go in the business flow. There are multiple. I wanted to explain to you 4 different gateways for now. The first is the either-or gateway. That's basically like it says in either-or, right? So based on a certain condition, you would decide to go left or to go right. Only one way. Then we have the parallel gateway. This is there to actually have multiple tasks run in parallel, not sequential, in parallel. Later we will have some examples for this too. Then the OR gateway. This is a very complex concept to understand what the difference is between OR and an either-or. Later in the examples you will definitely understand, but very briefly here, like I've said, an either-or means you can just go left or right. There's no both. But with an OR, you can go also both ways, but you have to go at least one way. And then there's the event-based gateway, also a quite complex but also useful one. Here it's basically based on a certain event. So we are waiting for an event to happen. And if it happens, we go one way. If it does not happen, for example, or another condition is met, we go another route. But these are the most important gateways. I want to explain later more with some examples. Then the last bit of theory I want to discuss are pools and lanes. Basically, pools and lanes are there to describe different roles and to showcase who is doing what in a process. For example, here you can see we have 2 different pools, process A, process B, each one is a pool. And in process A, we have multiple roles, which are lanes in the end. And these 2 processes are communicating via the message flow. We have also a different kind of a flow, like an arrow, but you will see it later too. That's all the theory I wanted to cover for now. Everything I have explained now will be more easy when we do the examples right now. So let me jump to the tool. So here we are, and I want to explain with some easy examples the gateways and also the task and maybe the events that you have. So every process starts with an event and every process ends with an event. So I'm just directly creating it here. And let's have a very basic case study. Let's think about a bank who wants to approve a loan, okay? That's a very easy thing. So we could say we have a first activity where the bank user is entering loan details, okay? For example, we want to say you're entering the loan detail. For example, $1 million is the loan. And then based on the number, like if it's higher than something, higher than 1 million, we want to go route A, otherwise route B. This could be a good example for an XOR, for an either or. So let's do this example here. I'm very briefly modeling this example, and then we can execute it and see in real life how this looks like for the user. So let's do one thing. Okay, what do we do here? Just very easily creating some user tasks. That's too much. I'm just beautifying it a bit, and then I will explain again what we are doing here. So this is how a possible process could look like with an either or, right? So the idea is we're entering loan details. And now let's say if the loan is higher than a certain number, what do we want to do? We could have a send email task, right, to the boss or something like this. And if it's not, we could do something else. We could call the boss. So different activities based on the condition, right? So like I've said, a user task could potentially be a user form, like a form you're entering data. And that's what we're doing now. We want to create a form. So I'm just entering here the loan form, and we will create a form together. And let's say this form only has one information. It's the credit amount. And it's a number. And we make this field required, so the user has to enter it. Now going back here, like I've said, we want to say if the credit number is higher than 1 million, we want to send an email. If it's lower, we want to call the boss. Okay? So we have to now, here in the condition, enter this. It says if credit amount, let's say, is greater than 1 million, what we do is we send an email. Now this one, we could now specify if it's less than or equal, but I just click on default flow. This means just else, right? So here it was greater than 1 million. And this default flow is in any other case. If it's not more than 1 million, then we go this route. Now let me demonstrate you this use case, how this looks like for the real user. So I'm just starting my application here. The credit example is the workflow I'm choosing. That's the one I'm just doing here. Now entering loan details. So now I just get asked, what is the credit amount? Let's say it's 2 million, right? So now the amount is 2 million. I can complete. And what happens next? Now I got the send email activity. Why is that? Here you can see after entering the loan, it was larger than 1 million. So send email is the next activity. Here at this point, at this gateway, either this route or the route below is true, not both, only one. And in this case, send email was the one. And if I complete this one very briefly, we see flow is done. Also, I can make the other example very quick. Let's say it's just $1, so a very low amount. Then we have the call boss activity, right? You see the other path was chosen, only one again. Okay. That's the XOR, the either or, which I wanted to explain very briefly. Now let's change things a little bit. Let's use the parallel gateway. Okay. So what we could do is, let's call this just, I want to explain the parallel gateway now. Just binding this here. Okay, cool. So what do we want to do? Let's say we are changing this gateway and this gateway to the parallel one. So now these conditions, we're going to remove it. That's not needed. It doesn't make any sense for now. Is there anything in? Don't think so. Let me quickly remove it so it looks just better. Okay, that looks better. So what does this mean now? In this example, now we have changed the either or gateway to parallel. This means we are entering the loan details, and then in parallel, these two activities are open. And only if both of these activities, send email and call boss, both are done, only then the user task here gets started. So whenever one of these two is not completed, we are not able to proceed at this step under no condition. So let's save this again and publish it. So you can see how this looks like in real world for a user. Again, I'm starting the example. The credit amount doesn't make any difference for now because we have removed this condition. Now I've completed this step, and as you can see, both activities, call boss and send email, both are now open for me to take, right? And so you can see here, both are in green because both are now active. And when I decide to complete this one, you can see send email is still open. And until this one is not closed, we are not able to proceed. So you could imagine if someone is never doing this, this process never will be closed, which is potentially a bad thing, just to keep in mind. But this is how the parallel gateway works. I hope this makes sense to you. If I complete this, now the last task is here. I can complete that and everything is done. This was the parallel gateway. Now, we wanted to discuss the OR gateway, the inclusive OR. Let me here again switch very basically these gateways. So now we have these inclusive OR gateways here. What does this mean? Like I've said, for the either OR, only one path is valid. For this inclusive OR, at least one path has to be chosen, but all can be chosen, right? So what does this mean? Again, we need some conditions here. Let me, for example, put the following condition. If the credit amount is greater than 100, right? So this path is greater than 100. Then we go this route. But now here in this condition, we could say if the credit amount is greater than 1000, then we want to go this direction here down. And as you can imagine, if the value is, for example, 1 million, what is true? Both are true, so both paths will be chosen. For the XOR gateway, this is not possible because in the XOR, it's seen like an if, else if. So only one is possible. But here, multiple are possible. Let me show you this again in reality. How does this look like? Saving, I'm just deploying the app. And then we can run. That's fine. Let me open the credit example. So, like I've said, let's make it easy, okay? Let's take 150 for now. And as you can see, as only the first condition was met, only the first task, send email, is there, right? $150 I've entered, and this makes sense. Let's finish it. That's okay. And now let me again put another value. So let's put 2000, right? What happens then? Exactly, both paths will be chosen. Like I've said, as you can see, if it's over 100, we go this way. If it's over 1000, we go this way. In this case, both are true and both will be chosen. But only one is also possible, right? So that's the OR gateway. I know it's a bit complex to understand, but that's basically it. I hope you got it. I hope you got this one. Let me know in the comments too. So now the very last thing I want to do with you is the event-based gateway. And this one is a bit more complex to model, so we'll just take a bit more time for this one. So let's do one thing. Oh, okay. So for now, we can again enter these details. And let's say then the event-based gateway is the following here. And this is just demonstrating we are waiting for something to happen, okay? So one possible outcome could be either catching a certain signal. So for example, another workflow has to do something. We're waiting for it. And we also want to have an alternative, like a timeout, right? So if nothing is coming, we also want to proceed in some way, right? So we want to have a timeout, for example. So let's say here in duration, let's say 1 minute. We're waiting for 1 minute. That's a good idea, right? So we have a timeout after 1 minute. I can call it after 1 minute. Now we have to name this signal. Let's call it just signal or signal 1. It's a good thing. Right. And if signal 1 is occurring, right? If signal 1 is coming into, we want to have the activity call boss. And if it's not coming in, but 1 minute, if signal 1 is not coming in under 60 seconds, we want to go the alternative path as a timeout. Send email or so, something like this. And then we can say whatever, we just close it this way. This could be a potential use case for the event-based gateway. Now, as I've mentioned, a signal is coming from a different process, so I have to quickly create a different process to do this. So that's the signal process flow. Let me quickly enter something. All right. So let's say this flow is just a dummy, right? So we're just doing something, and then we will send this signal here. Let's also call it signal 1, so we know which one it is. And I'm also referring to it as signal 1. That's important because this signal 1 and this signal 1 is the same, right? So they have to match. And yeah, this should be good enough. So let's save it, deploy it. All right. All right, so now I'm in the application. Let's start the following. So we're starting the credit example. Just entering some loan. As you can see now here, it's waiting for the signal or for the timeout. Any of these options have to occur. Now let's start the signal process. Just finish it very quickly. And now we go back here. You see the signal was catched because now call boss activity is open. And that's here, right? So the signal was successfully catched. So multiple processes were able to communicate right now. That's awesome. We can finish it. That's fine. Now we also want to check if the timeout is working, right? So I'm starting a new flow. Here in history, now it's again waiting for the signal to occur or this 1 minute to pass. This time we will just wait for 60 seconds. So the timeout is winning and send email is the activity I'm expecting. So let's wait for a couple of seconds. All right, so as you've seen, 1 minute is done. And here the path is going to send email. So I'm expecting this as open task. And yeah, the task is open. And so yeah, it worked perfectly fine. I can complete it and the whole flow is done again. And that's the event-based gateway in action. So now I've demonstrated you the important gateways that we have, the tasks and events. I hope this makes sense to you. If you're interested in more BPMN content, let me know down below. That's it for now. Take care. Bye-bye. In this video, I'm going to show you the BPMN Gateways, what exactly they stand for, and also how and when to use them with real-life examples. Let's jump right into it. First, what is a BPMN gateway? BPMN stands for Business Process Model and Notation, and is a standard for business process modeling. A BPMN gateway is a certain element within this modeling notation. Within the business process, a gateway is a decision point which influences which of the following paths in the business process will be passed next based on given conditions. Let me give you an example. When someone asks you if you also want to order a pizza, you ask yourself, am I hungry? Based on the outcome of this question, you decide whether you also order a pizza or not. This is a possible representation of a BPMN gateway, because based on the condition if you're hungry or not, you will decide which path you will go, either ordering or not. After clarifying what a BPMN gateway is, let me show you which BPMN gateways we have within the BPMN standard. There are mainly 5 BPMN gateways. Let me name the 5 first, and then I'll dive deeper into each of them. The first one is the either-or gateway, also called XOR gateway. Here we have 2 possible forms on how to model this gateway. It's also called the default gateway, because it's so commonly used. The next one is the OR gateway. There is a very important difference between the OR and the either-or gateway. I will show you in a second. Then we have the parallel gateway, the event-based gateway, and the complex gateway. Now let me demonstrate you each of the BPMN gateways. The either-or gateway represents an either-or decision. We are using either-ors very often in a day, and it's pretty intuitive. Shall I wear the brown shoes or the black ones today? Is the light switch on or off? You would always use the either-or gateway when you want to represent the decision that from here only one path is valid and all the others are not. Let me explain this one. Imagine a self-driving car. While driving, the car is constantly checking traffic lights. After checking the traffic light, the question is, did the traffic light switch from green to yellow? Based on the observation of the car, there are only 2 options, either yes or not. When the answer is no, then the car keeps its speed, because the light won't turn to red. In case the traffic light switched from green to yellow, the car calculates its behavior, whether it should keep the speed, increase it, or start to slow down. Only one and exactly one path is valid here, never both. The question based on an either-or gateway doesn't have to be a yes or no question. Yes or no is just very simple to understand. This example is simplified, of course, but I think this should explain the concept of either-or BPMN gateways pretty good. Let me know in the comment section below if this makes sense to you. Alright, now it's time for the OR gateway. Like I've mentioned in the beginning, there is an important difference between either-or and OR. Usually in our daily conversations, we say OR, then we mean either-or. Therefore, we reference to the either-or BPMN gateway in usual language. The OR gateway is also called the inclusive OR. Why? Let me explain you again with an example. In the end of this video, you are probably going to evaluate this video. This video might be like-worthy to you, so you would like the video, or maybe even subscribe-worthy, so you would subscribe to the channel, or even something else. The key of the inclusive OR is that at least one path has to be chosen. You can also go multiple paths, or even all, but at least one. That's why we also call it the inclusive OR. To get the concept of this inclusive OR can be a bit hard, as we use OR, like I said, in our daily life as an either-or. Now let's jump to the next BPMN gateway. The parallel gateway is used when we want to represent activities that are getting worked on in parallel, not in sequence. A single person in general never does things in parallel. This would be real-time multitasking. We rather do things in sequence. But IT systems or activities conducted by different actors could run in parallel. Let me give you an example here. Let's assume you want to have a call with your boss regarding an event that you've planned. In order to do this, you first write an email to the assistant of your boss. This email needs an approval from the assistant. While the assistant is approving, you are in parallel preparing documents for the call with your boss. And when, and only when, you prepared the documents and you got the approval, only then you would call your boss. If you have prepared the documents before the approval has been given, you would wait before you would call your boss. Also the other way around, when the approval got submitted and you have not prepared the documents yet, you wouldn't call your boss either. The parallel BPMN gateway implies that you can only proceed further if all paths within the parallel gateways have been completed. Let me know in the comments if this makes sense to you. The next BPMN gateway is the event-based gateway. It also has a lot of similarities to the previous either-or gateway, because only one path is valid. Imagine the following scenario. It's Friday afternoon, and tonight there is a huge party from one of your working colleagues, but you told one of your friends, who is not really into parties, that you would want to join him for a chill evening, but your friend would need to tell you latest at 7 p.m. if he has time for this evening or not. The alternative would be the party. This scenario implied that we need a gateway which is referring to the event if your friend calls you before 7 p.m. or not. That's the way how we would model this scenario. We have the event-based gateway, and after this gateway we have these two possible events. The first event would be the call from your friend, and the second one would be the alternative, in case your friend wouldn't call at all. So it's 7 p.m. We need this alternative, otherwise we would wait until forever. There is also a parallel event-based gateway. It's simply the combination of event-based gateways and also the opportunity to have parallel valid paths. But for now that's good. Let's jump to the complex BPMN gateway. Do you remember the either-or and the parallel gateway? The either-or described that only one path is valid, and the parallel gateway described that all paths have to be finished. The complex BPMN gateway is called complex because we can specify the logic every time we use it. Let me make an example here. Let's say we start a computer system. This system would now do some tasks in parallel. For now, let's call these tasks task A, B, and C. When we would use the parallel gateway, then the next steps would only be conducted when all three tasks are done. But let's say we already want to do another task as soon as 2 out of the 3 tasks are done. This is how we can use a complex BPMN gateway. This BPMN gateway is based on specification. That makes it very powerful, but also a bit complex. Which one of the BPMN gateways have you already used? And which ones are you going to use more often now? In this video, I'm going to show you the difference between BPMN XOR versus OR gateways. In the next couple of minutes, I will dive deeper into these two gateways and I will show you a real-life example for both. Let's jump right into it and let's start with the XOR gateway first. Imagine the following business scenario. We are working for a bank and we have the job to model the loan request business process. To keep things simple, let's assume that as soon as a loan request gets into our systems, the first step is to check whether the client who is requesting a loan has a positive credit score. So either the credit score is positive or not. When the credit score is positive, then the next step within our business process would be the approval. But when the credit score is not positive, then we reject the loan request. Let's model this scenario. We start with the start event, loan request received. As I said, the first task is to check the credit score. For sure, checking the credit score might be a complex sub-process because multiple systems might interact. But in this video, let's keep things simple because we only want to focus on the difference between the BPMN XOR and OR gateway. This is why I'm modeling the task with the plus symbol here. It shows that behind this task there is a lot more to come, an own process. Let's assume the process of checking the credit score returns a value that might be true or false. True when the credit score is positive and false for the alternative. With an XOR gateway, here illustrated with an X in the diamond symbol, we now want to check if the returned credit score is positive or not. If the credit score is positive, then we accept the loan. Also here, this is a complex task, that's why I'm using the plus symbol again. If the credit score is negative, then we reject the loan. After either way, the loan request process is done. Either accepted or rejected. Let's illustrate a possible workflow with a token. As the process gets triggered, we generate a token in the start event. From here, we navigate to the first task, checking the credit score. After doing so, we move to the XOR gateway and check the value of the credit score. For this process instance, we assume the score was positive, so we move on to accepting the loan request. This step may also take a couple of sub-steps because there might be many approval chains. After that, we reach the end event, loan request accepted, and this token gets eliminated. For the other case, let's illustrate that with the yellow token. We also check the score, but this time the score is negative. Therefore, we go the other path. Rejecting the request and terminating also this token is the next step here. Alright, after understanding the XOR gateway, let's jump to the OR gateway. Let's take an everyday example. like ordering food. Let's say this process starts when we notice hunger. Then we choose what we want to eat. For this example, let's limitate it for 3 alternatives like pizza, pasta and salad. We can choose 1, 2 or all 3. After deciding in our mind what we want, we are going to select these foods onto our order. We place the order, wait until we receive the order, and that's it. Let's model this scenario. The process gets triggered as soon as we notice hunger, so that's our start event. First, we choose the food. Now, as I said, we have 3 foods to choose from. We can choose 1, 2 or all 3 dishes. Pizza, pasta, salad. That's the inclusive OR BPMN gateway. The XOR gateway only allowed 1 path. Now we have to go at least 1 path. After selecting the food, we place the order and wait until it arrives. That's it. Now let's also walk this process through with a token. In our example, we choose pizza and salad. That's why the inclusive OR now creates a second token. If you would choose all 3 alternatives, we would have 3 tokens. When they join together again, we are with 1 token left. And this 1 token is going through the rest of the business process. So now you have seen 2 examples for an XOR and an OR gateway. Let's make a quick comparison between these 2 again. Like I said, the XOR is an either or, so only option A or the other one. Only one is possible. OR is an inclusive OR. For the XOR, we have only 1 path that is valid, and for OR, we have at least 1 path, but multiple are possible. Also, the XOR gateway has only 1 token going out, but the OR gateway has multiple ones, at least 1. If you want more content about BPMN or business analysis related content, let me know in the comment section below. Also, feel free to hit the like button and the subscribe button if you don't want to miss out more of this content. Thanks for watching and take care.
With BPMN, you as a business analyst are able to portray the complex reality into a simple BPMN diagram, hence making reality visible and making it possible for you to see and understand issues in the business process within your company, bottlenecks, chances and risks overall. Let me show with an example what I exactly mean. This BPMN diagram displays the loan request process within a bank. This is just an example for illustration purposes. Let's say there are just 3 roles within the bank: the back office, the compliance and the client advisor. Let's say a client wants to have a loan, hence sends a loan request to the back office. This could be via application, via an app or via a letter. It doesn't matter right now. Let's say the back office employee has to check the documents and asks him or herself, are all documents okay? If that is the case, then the loan request goes to the compliance officer. Here, the compliance officer checks the background of the person, of the loan requester. After this, the client advisor comes into play and assesses the risk of the person who is requesting the loan. And if the client advisor thinks it's worth talking to the client in more detail, then the advisor is contacting the client, setting up a meeting or so, and that's it. So there are some next steps which I just exclude here for demonstration purposes, but let's assume that's the business process. The great thing with BPMN is now we have captured the complex reality, the current state, the as-is state of this business process. If we have a process engine or KPIs around, we could maybe see something like this. Let's say the bank receives 100 requests a day. And let's also assume the process takes on average 0.5 hours for each run, so 30 minutes. And let's assume the employees involved in this process on average make $30 an hour, meaning we have 100 runs every day. Let's take this times 0.5 hours, which one completion takes, which actually mean 50 hours a day. And as we know, $30 per hour is the average salary or hourly rate. Let's multiply this with the 50 hours and we get $1,500. So each day this process takes us $1,500. After we have understood this, we as a business analyst, or you as a business analyst, have the job to really think about, okay, based on this process diagram or this complex reality, what could we change to make the process more efficient in terms of time efficiency or lowering the costs or enhancing quality is also possible. And let's assume this assess risk task of the client advisor is something super manual. So the client advisor has to look through multiple Excel sheets, has to look or check in multiple systems just to get this value out, if it's worth talking to the client or not. And this could be a potential chance for you as a business analyst to optimize the business process. What if you could replace this manual task of assessing the risk with a simple API call? So if you change the system in a way that the client advisor doesn't have to check in these systems or in these Excel sheets, but just maybe has to press one button, an API call to various systems is done, and it returns a value which indicates if the client advisor should talk to this client in more detail or not. And this is the power why BPMN is so important, because it really shows you the reality, and you can manipulate the reality very easily without actually touching the reality itself, because everything is on a model and a diagram on paper first, so you can conceptually change the reality and find out what would be worth doing as a next step. If you also assume that maybe an API call or just a more automated solution can maybe put the time of this process in half, so not 30 minutes, just 15 minutes, this would mean per day we could save $750. So if it's $750 saved per day, let's assume we have 20 business days a month, this would equal $15,000 each month. $15,000 a month equals $180,000 a year. So if we assume that we could really decrease the time of this process in half by having the same amount of runs every day, we could actually save 180K a year each year, right? So you could think of what would it cost to actually establish such a solution so we are able to decrease the time of this process in half. And this could be actually an investment and return on investment actually. Let's assume it costs us maybe 200K to do this. After a year and a half, we actually get our money back, because with these process improvements, we actually save some money. And so we have a great ROI on this case. As a business analyst, you really have the power to thrive internal case studies to actually optimize processes, lower costs, save some time, or actually increase the quality. And that's why BPMN is so important. How to optimize a business process as a business analyst with these 5 simple techniques and BPMN. Let me show you. Let's assume we have this following process here. It's very basic. It just performs a couple of tasks. The very first step we could do to optimize this business flow is by eliminating a task. So maybe we find out a step in between is absolutely not necessary, or we can delete a couple of things within the step and make the process more lean in this case. This is totally possible, and in practice it also happens that we have steps which actually don't provide value. The second technique or second way to actually improve a business process could be vice versa. So if you assume that's the as-is process, the target process could look like this. So putting a step in between, because for example between do A and do C there's so much of a gap that having a do B step in between could optimize the flow in terms of reducing the time needed or enhancing the quality. The third thing we could do is actually outsource a task. So for example, let's say this pool here, this lane represents our company, and we could just quickly do it like this, that we say, okay, we don't do step B internally, but what we do is we outsource it. Hence, we actually could model it like this. So what this means now actually is that we do A, then we give maybe a notification to a vendor, the lane is a vendor, and the vendor does something for us and gives us the information, and then we do C. So we have just outsourced a task. Then again, the fourth way to optimize the business process could be again vice versa. So if you assume this is the as-is state, we could kill the interface to the vendor. So we would just kill it here, and maybe it would be like this again. Maybe we'd need a do B step in between, and we're actually back. So we have not outsourced it, we have insourced it again. And the fifth way to actually optimize a business process could be by swapping tasks. So maybe it does make more sense to do C before B. So we have just swapped these tasks from the order perspective. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to change the order, because if we do it, maybe some follow-up steps get easier or faster. This could be one way. Then there is also a bonus way, a sixth way. It's kind of like similar to outsourcing, but maybe in a different way. Maybe we do not want to outsource to a different company, but let's say we have internal employees, some different roles. We could maybe outsource it to someone else within the company, if this makes more sense and makes the process more higher quality, faster, or maybe lowering costs. So these were 5, or let's say 6 ways to optimize a business process as a business analyst.